If you love history, traditional arts and skills, and vintage living as much as I do, come join me here at the Homestead, where the conversations are always interesting and educational. I'm glad you're here. Hello and welcome to Willow's Vintage Homestead, where we talk about all manner of old-timey topics. I'm your host, Willow Polson, and with me today is Shannon Poe, who has a lot of information about a miner that probably no one really has ever heard of that was in the northern Mariposa County area, in my area, not too far from where I live. So tell us a little bit about your interest in this, Mr. Poe.
Well, it's kind of, thank you for having me, Willow. I greatly appreciate it. I love history. It's actually, next to gold mining, is probably my second best passion, is learning about the history, and especially this area, because it's fascinating to me anyway. And it's just got a rich history. And so that's kind of a little bit about me. I came here about 20 years ago. I grew up in Oregon, born in California, but only because Dad was in the Navy. And when Mom went to visit him, I came out a month early. So one of those surprise things down in San Diego. But I grew up in Oregon, and I started mining when I was really, really little. I think I was probably 11, and I got introduced it from one of my best friend's dad. And we loaded this funky boat in a truck, and it turned out to be a gold dredge, and we went dredging, and that was back in the 1970s. So that was kind of when I got my feet wet. But when I came to
mining, you weren't a child miner with down in the hard rock tunnels, because when you said you started mining at a young age, I'm like, oh no.
No, it was in a creek up in Oregon, and so there's two types of mining, and we might as well kind of disseminate that now. So one is called hard rock mining, or lode, LODE mining, and the other is placer. The hard rock mining is the vein that's actually in the ground, still in the ground, never touched by humans, etc. And that's where you see mine tunnels and things. That's hard rock mining. Right. The placer mining is what you see when people go and use a shovel in a creek bed, and then they pan that out. So I do mostly hard rock mining now, although I've done a lot of placer mining, and that's how I got my introduction into it, good God, 50 years ago. So there's about 80% of the gold on planet Earth is still in the ground, according to the USGS. So even though the old timers, and we see evidence all over the place here in the North County of Mariposa, they didn't get it all. And to give you an example, Willow, we went out and we did a little crush where we took ore, hard quartz rocks, and we crushed about maybe 10 pounds of those as a test crush today, and to see how much fine gold was in it. And you have to break that down, and it's basically you put it in a machine that spins around with these giant hammers, and it just turns it into powder, and then you go over to the panning tub and you pan it out. Well, we weighed that out at about 4 grams of gold, which is in today's dollars is about $400.
Wow.
And that's one rock that's less than the weight of a bowling ball.
Oh, that's better rocks than I've got. I've got an old mining claim that I live on in the middle of Stanislaus National Forest, and it was never anything. I mean, they did some test tunnels, they dug down, they built some stuff, and it's all still there, but they apparently just abandoned it because it didn't really have anything in it. So yeah, you've got a good good spot there.
Well, so a good lode mine will run about over a half ounce per ton. You can make money at it just with the cost of fuel, and we run heavy equipment, dump truck, and we have a big excavator, backhoe. We even have a bulldozer. Oh, wow. But so it costs money to run those because they drink a lot of diesel. So a good mine, if it's a half ounce per ton, doing the math on what we have, because you'd take that 10 pounds, 4 grams, there's 31 grams in an ounce, and you do the math and the multiplication out, and this is running about 25 ounces per ton, meaning in today's dollars, that's about $70,000 per scoop with my backhoe. Now, not all of it is that rich. It most certainly is. And so you can make really, really good money, but it's taken a lifetime to try to find that deposit. So,
Right. It's
but
not
let
easy.
me back up and tell you a little bit about where, because I know where you live. Obviously, we're friends and we have been for
Yeah.
years. But there's so if you look at the quartz deposits that brought all of the gold to the surface, and then it eroded, and some of it went down and washed into the rivers and streams, and that's where they plastered it, the old timers
Right.
in the 1850s. If you look at it like a can of Pringles potato chips, if you laid it on its side and you took all those chips out and you laid them out still kind of close to one another, you'd see that there's just a layer after layer after layer after layer of potato chip inside.
Yep,
That's
yep.
kind of how the quartz veins are here, and they run northeast to southwest. Anyway, and so you may have a quartz vein at your house, and then you come a quarter of a mile towards Greeley Hill, and there's another vein. And you see one, as a matter of fact,
Mhm.
just a couple of miles from your place. That's another vein that ties in with the Argo mine. And then
Oh, yeah.
as you get closer to where I am in Greeley Hill, there's a series of about 6 veins in here
Oh, gee.
that do that same thing. And we're on one of those 6 veins.
Although not all veins are created equally, right? I mean, yeah,
Correct.
obviously mine is not so great, but yours is like, holy moly.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing when you become a gold miner, is that you have to educate yourself on hydrology and geology and a lot of other things that have to do with being able to look at a rock and go, okay, I understand what's going on here. So what happened is, if we go back in time, let's say 1 billion years ago, because Earth's about 4 billion years old. If we go back 1 billion years ago, there used to be oceans and stuff, and maybe not quite that far. Let's say 700,000 years or whatever. The ground was a lot flatter than it is now, especially where we're at. A lot of
Right,
this
right.
actually was a part of an ocean. There used to be a giant river about 75 million years ago that used to run north and south in California, and that moved a lot of gold, the placer gold.
Oh,
And you can go right over in Moore Creek, on top of the mountain above Moore Creek. You'll find river rock literally on top of the mountain up there.
huh.
And that's from that ancient river, but that got lifted up when the Pacific plate
Mhm.
pushed under the Sierra Nevadas, and
Right,
then
right,
that caused the mountains to grow, and that's where we are today.
right.
But then there's layers of, let's say that there's slate, or it's shale, or it's marble or granite, whatever. Those layers, those original in situ layers, through that tectonic plate movement, it creates cracks in between those layers. And then you have volcanic activity, which we call an epithermal, and that
Mhm.
pushes, like a big giant tube of toothpaste of quartz. It
Yeah.
pushes molten quartz up in between those cracks. Then it cools and it creates another little crack.
Oh,
Then it'll
that's how
push
that
another,
works.
yeah, it'll push another thing. So at our mine, our vein runs anywhere between 2 feet and 20 feet thick.
Oh,
And
gee.
where it gets really thick, we've actually counted the number of toothpaste squeezes, if you will, as 14 times. It pumped in there and then it cooled, and it created a little bit of a gap, because as it cools, it gets smaller.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then it filled that crack in, and then that created a crack, and then it pumped again. And out of those 14 layers, if you look at it, it all looks like one big giant rock, although it's not. It's actually separated by a very thin layer of iron. And
Oh,
the two middle, out of the 14 layers, the two middle, or the three middle layers, are the ones that really had a lot of gold, because every time Mother Earth pumped and it pushed it up here, it brought other minerals. And
right.
then in most of the area here in the North County, after the epithermal, that's the toothpaste squeeze, um, a hydrothermal event happened. And what a hydrothermal event is we call it a Stanley steamer, because it's kind of like a carpet steamer. Is it's a very hot, gaseous liquid, mostly water, but it was highly mineralized. It had iron, and it had gold, and it had silver and zinc and lead.
Oh, wow.
That started just venting, and it permeated into the quartz vein. And the 3 layers in between, the 3 good really pay layers, it had a lot of other little chemical and mineral elements in it. And when those
Huh.
met, with the hydrothermal starting to permeate through the quartz, it started growing gold crystals. And
Shoot.
it's amazing. I have some specimens that we've put in acid, and we've basically dissolved the quartz away and just left the chunk of gold in the middle. And some of these are the size of a grapefruit, just absolutely
Whoa.
sparkly, beautiful, very, very valuable
Yeah.
gold. But anyway, so that's how the deposits got
Huh.
dropped. Let's go back in history just briefly, and then I'll
Well,
I'll I'll give you the floor back. Is that most of the miners that came here during the gold rush had no idea what they were doing.
that's what I was gonna say, is that how could someone know? I mean, we barely even knew how Yosemite was created with glaciers. I mean, how would anybody know that back in 1850?
Well, they didn't. And, because the newspapers all over the world in 1849, when the San Francisco guy said, oh, yeah, the big gold discovery, that spread throughout the world to Australia and Germany and Finland and
Yeah. Almost
Hawaii and
worldwide, yeah.
everywhere. And yeah, and the papers embellished that to state that, okay, all you have to do is walk around and you can pick up handfuls and fill your pockets full of nuggets. And so everybody flocked here from all over the world. Well, they weren't gold miners, they were farmers and loggers and, ranchers or whatever.
Right,
And
right.
and they came here and they had no idea what they were doing. They had actually no idea how to mine,
Yep.
or even what gold looked like. So, most, I'm going to say 70% of the people that came here during the gold rush mined it incredibly poorly. We go around in their tailing piles and metal detect and find thousands of dollars worth of gold because they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't see it.
Right, right. Well,
So,
and there's different colors of gold too. It's not all the same. Since I've seen some local gold that's almost like a bronze color.
yeah, and that's typically indicative if it has a lot of copper, or could be silver. It could
Hmm.
be, a lot of different minerals that could color that. The Black Hills gold that you see, that's kind of the greenish color, and that
Pinkish.
has a lot of copper in it.
Ah.
The gold up here, though, is incredibly pure. So
Mm.
pure gold, 99.9999% gold, doesn't exist in nature. It just doesn't. You have to refine that.
Right.
So what we have here, and we've had ours assayed, I don't know, dozens and dozens of times. It comes in at about 22 and a half carat, which is some of the most pure gold on planet Earth.
Wow.
So it doesn't take much refining. But yeah, the thing is that I can only speak to our mine right now, is that our mine is very close to the surface. We can actually dig the quartz vein and expose it with machinery without
Uh-huh.
having to blast and tunnel underground.
Right, right.
And because it's so close to the surface, just the oxygen itself, that's what causes rust on iron. And you see the iron staining the red rocks and orange rocks all the time.
Yep.
That's from oxidation. But the gold came up in another solution that we call sulfides, and it really kind of hides the gold. But because our
Hmm.
deposit is so close to the surface, the oxygen has dissolved, for lack of a better term, all of that, the sulfides, and just left gold.
Oh,
So
gee.
it's pretty cool. Yeah. We have
Nice.
gold and silver, but we get, 99% of what we get as far as metals go. And I shouldn't say that. About 95% is gold,
Hmm.
about 4% is zinc, and then 1% is silver.
Oh, wow. So yeah, I mean that's something people don't realize is that there's a lot of different types of minerals in this area, and I mean you can find malachite, you can find galena, which is where you get silver from often, and yeah, people think, oh, you just walk around, there's a quartz vein, you get gold out of the quartz vein, and you're done. It's like no, no, there's a lot of stuff up here.
Well, I've been searching for a really valuable lode deposit for all of my life, and it took about 30 years to find a good one.
Hmm.
So I've
Well, you
had other
definitely have a
ones
good
that
one.
you could crush and you could get a half ounce or 3/4 ounce
Hmm.
per ton, but nothing like this. And this is really a very special one. So yeah, pretty cool. But so I'm happy to discuss John Nicolas Perlot, JN Perlot. So his book, and you had a chance to read that, didn't you?
I have not read his
Oh,
book. Did I know there was a book? Did you
there
say?
is, and I'll tell you what, Willow, I have a couple of copies of that, and I have, I think, two copies that I loan out. I will loan you one, and it is a fascinating read. So,
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Mr. Perlot, he was in his, I want to say either late 20s or around 19, around 30 years old in 1850, and he lived in Belgium, and he had a couple of buddies, and they got the newspapers like everybody else. Perlot was he was an educated man. He was very, very intelligent, intellectual, very mild mannered, unless you really angered him, and then he'd hit you with a shovel. And then he'd help you off the ground. But
It sounds like me. No, wait, no, no, no.
anyway, he read the newspapers, and he got about five of his buddies. One was from France and the Belgium area, uh, Danish guy. I don't remember where all they came from, but it was around that area. And they hopped on a boat and they sailed all the way to America. And then they took another boat all the way around the Horn and came to um, they landed. I want to say it was in oh gosh, what's not Morro Bay.
Uh,
Anyway,
Half Moon Bay, Santa
Half Moon
Cruz.
Bay, yeah, somewhere around in that area. They landed there, and they only had like $100 a piece, and they had no weapons, and basically a knapsack with a stick, like you would picture. And they
Oh, wow.
decided that they were going to hike from there to Mariposa. And at about that time, Perlot started keeping a daily diary, and which is really what the book turned into. And
Aha.
so anyway, this story, and we'll talk about obviously some things in the book. That's what I got exposed to about 20 years ago, was this book, and I was jaw-droppingly fascinated by it. That diary sat in, I don't remember where they found it, but it was found or given to a librarian in Berkeley, California, in early 1980s, and they went, holy cow, this needs to be published. So
Wow,
they
yeah.
took his diary and they literally published his diary. That is what the book is. So it's not somebody telling a tale. This is Perlot from his words of being here from 1851 to about 1858, and it's amazing.
Oh, yeah, I've gotta see that. I mean, because he walked around, like, not too far from where I am here.
Correct. He actually, I guarantee you, at some point he walked probably right by your house. There were really no roads, so to speak, back in 1851. So let me back up. And so he and his buddies walk all the way from Half Moon Bay, from the ocean to Mariposa, and because they heard that that was the place to go, and they were really focused on Bear Valley,
Mhm.
which is just north of the airport there.
Yep, yep.
And there were a group of Mexicans that were there that had found, and so I'm glad that we talked about the ancient river channel, because that is what got locked up on top of the mountain there in Bear Valley. It was all ancient river gravels. They found
Uh-huh.
it and they started digging. Well, these Mexican nationals, they dug down and they found that there was a big kind of a hole, a bowl cut into the ground by Mother Earth that concentrated the gold. And they pulled out, I don't know, like $2 million in $1850. So
Whoa.
I can't even imagine what that would be like today. You'd be close to half a million bucks, or I mean, a
Yeah,
half $1 billion.
calculators, we could figure that out.
Yeah. But anyway, so Perlot, they walked from Mariposa to Bear Valley, and he went to work for about 50 cents a day in the rain, in the muck, in the mud, digging and running it through a sluice box for the claim owner. Now, the claim owner, all he had to do was write on a piece of paper, and he claimed a 100 by 100-foot section of the creek there in Bear Valley. Well, he was paying Perlot and his buddies 50 cents a day. So he was kicking out about, $3 in labor for these guys to dig. And the guy was
Mhm.
making, I don't know how many ounces he was pulling, probably 5. So he was making $100 and paying these guys $3.
Pretty good deal for
Yeah,
him.
if you're the claim owner. So
Yep.
Perlot kind of catches on to this, and he goes, it is pretty stupid. Why are we giving this guy, all of the gold and we're doing all the
Right.
work and he doesn't do crap? So they decide, and this is after a couple of months, they decided they were going to branch off and explore. And so he went down the mountain all the
Mhm.
way to Bagby.
Yep.
And back then they had a little ferry there, and he went up the hill of the group we call the Porphyry group, because there was a series of mines there that came later than that. And then he hiked up to Coulterville, spent some time in Coulterville, and then he ended up in the Greeley Hill area.
Uh-huh.
And as a matter of fact, the road that is literally in front of my house and my shop where I'm sitting right now
Mhm.
was Perlot's trail that he used to go to his first cabin,
Oh,
um,
wow.
which is in Marble Gulch, which is right by Bower Cave. He
Okay.
his cabin, his first cabin, he was about 2 miles, not even 2 miles from Bower Cave. He was up that Marble Gulch area that's really difficult to hike and get in there. But
Mhm.
he was a French guy. Well, he's in Belgium, but same thing. And they loved their wine. And so Perlot would hike from all the way out past Bower Cave. He would walk, put his shotgun on his shoulder, and he would just take off and he'd walk all the way to Coulterville and go get a case of Bordeaux. That
Oh,
was
good
his
heavens.
favorite wine. And then he'd turn around and walk home.
Huh. Oh, wow. That's a lot. That's heavy, and
Can
that's a
you
long
imagine? There's
ways.
no roads. He
No,
didn't have
but
a
there's
horse or
trails though. I mean, I
that was
found
it. Yeah.
some very old trails. I can't tell if they're full on I mean, at this point they're so overgrown and degraded you can't really tell what they are or were, but there's some trails around here that are quite old. They could be just like, Indian trails from the area. And by the way, people listening to this who are not from this area, California Indians generally do prefer the term Indians instead of Native Americans. Disclaimer over. Anyway, so there's a lot
Correct.
of trade routes and and comings and goings, especially in the Bower Cave area, because that was originally Utin, or a sacred site of the Miwok Indians of the area.
That's absolutely correct on all aspects. So Perlot met an Indian who he called Flesno, Flesno, and his name was Fresno. He was
Mm.
named, I don't know why, but he was one of the higher ups of the Yosemite. They called them Yosemite Indians back then,
Huh.
and they became fast friends. And Perlot, even later, in a couple of years later, he actually ended up fighting alongside the Indians against some of the whites that were trying to take things from the Indians. And so, very
Oh, wow.
honorable man. But the Dogtown Road goes all the way from the old Greeley Hill Road by the Linkletter Ranch all the way
Right.
down to Boulderville. That was an original Indian trail, and
Mm.
that was the route that Perlot walked. That
Oh,
later,
okay.
because it was the best grade for people to actually, haul mules and stuff,
Hmm.
that turned into a road, and that is Dogtown Road today.
Right, right. There's some good blackberry picking out there.
Oh my goodness! I just went and picked a giant tub and made a blackberry pie last night. As a matter of
Oh, did you? I'm
I
gonna make some
did.
blackberry mead, I think. I've got a bunch that I've saved in the freezer. I'm gonna make some mead.
Nice. I don't drink, so that does sound really good. I'll bet my
Mm.
wife would love that. But
Mhm.
anyway, so this is a fascinating thing. So Perlot, he had a couple of his friends die over a couple of years, dysentery.
Ooh.
Because people were peeing and pooping in the same creek that they were trying to mine, and they would drink it,
Right?
and it just, and then he couldn't figure out why he kept getting these boils, and
Oh,
they kept
no.
talking about the boils. Well, the boils, he had never been exposed to poison oak until he came to California.
Oh, poison oak, haha.
Yep. And they tried poultices and all kinds of,
Yeah.
home remedies made out in the bush. And every single time he tried one, it made it worse.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, they didn't have soap and stuff. But I want to put things into perspective. So, the back in the day, an ounce of gold was worth about $20.
Okay.
Okay. Today, as we sit here, an ounce of gold is worth $3,400.
Is it really? It's gone
It
up to
is
that.
$3,400 this morning.
I gotta
So
find some gold around here.
he would go to Groveland, and he would buy, tools like a shovel and things like that to give you the perspective of how much things cost back then and how they were jacked up and they were mining the miners. A
Yep.
shovel in 1851 cost the same as an ounce of gold. So in
Mhm.
today's dollars, that shovel would cost you $3,400.
Oh God.
So beans, coffee, bacon, things like that.
Eggs.
What it boiled down to was he would have to actually find about an ounce of gold a day just to be able to survive.
Oh man.
So it made it really, really difficult, but it is a fascinating book. He's a fascinating man.
We're almost out of time, but I do want to hear about these cabins, and you found one of his cabins.
I did. So I mean, I know the area extremely well, and he was talking about how he would hike around, and I could basically picture in my mind where he was at, because some of the things are still named that right now. Some of the names
Ah.
have changed, but he talked about Marble Gulch and Marble Springs, and he actually conflated the two. But he said he was 500 meters from the spring. Well, there's 5 springs in that canyon that goes for
Hmm.
7 or 8 miles. I hiked every single inch of that for 6 years until I finally found an area that I would focus on the springs and I would start to do circles at 500 meters. And I found
Yeah.
this flat spot. And then I found part of an old chimney. Everything
Ah.
else had burnt down long ago. And I metal detected it. 156 artifacts that we found in that 10 by the cabin was only 10 feet by 10 feet, but there were 156 artifacts, including a chunk of gold that he buried under the mantle where
Ah.
his fireplace was.
Oh wow. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. So you have
So,
like photos of the process? I'd be curious to see what it looks like.
well, we do. Good God, I don't know where they are, but there were. I mean, what they had done is after Perlot left in 1858, he left the cabin to a couple of other guys, and
Mhm.
so they probably weren't Perlot stuff. And then several fires have gone through there over the generations.
Right. Okay.
But they had the tools obviously leaned up against the outside of the cabin. So when the cabin burned down, all the tools just stacked up on top of each other and all the wood handles were gone. So it was just
Right.
the heads of the picks and axes and
Huh.
shovels, and yeah, pretty
And we
cool.
have no record of what they were doing. They didn't keep a diary or anything. We don't. Do we know who they were?
No, no, we don't. There's other stories, and then there's a ghost story that I could tell you about that specific spot that
Ooh.
I have a friend of mine who's a deputy sheriff that was camped there with another guy, and they got woke up by some sound. They were each camping in the back of their truck in their canopies, and they sat up, and there were 3 guys standing in the middle of the road, out in the middle of nowhere, and they could see right through these guys, but they had like the ancient, 1850s era clothing on, and they both saw it
Oh,
and
cool.
panicked. Yeah. But I have a ghost mine story, yeah, that, and we actually caught this stuff on film. That's
Oh, wow.
pretty amazing. Voices and rock picking in a mine that nobody's been in for 100 years.
Oh, wow. And you got that
Yeah,
on film, you said. Oh my goodness.
I didn't even believe in that stuff until I went in there, and
Mhm.
yeah, I filmed it, and I had other people with me. We were standing on broken ore cart track in knee deep mud that hadn't nobody been in there in 50 years at least. And we heard an ore cart coming down the tunnel towards us, went right by us and out the thing, and there was nothing there.
Ooh, cool. Oh, wow. Yeah,
Crazy
there's a
stuff.
lot of history, a lot of ghosts up here. Definitely, we have some weird things at the museum, and I always say, "Okay, Frank, that's enough of that."
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time. Fascinating stories. I knew this would be a fun half hour. And for those of you listening, there's a lot more interesting shows coming up and ones I've already recorded. And we'll see you again next time on Willow's Vintage Homestead. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Willow.